The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Projects and programs bringing children, parents, and children's books together are always exciting. Our guests today are involved in a collaborative project which does exactly that. Carol Frisch, Project Director for MOTHEREAD Minnesota, and Caron Chapman, Children's Coordinator of Parents Anonymous, will be talking with Sherry Lampman, Director of the Minnesota Library Foundation, about a new project, MOTHEREAD.
Hello, Carol and Caron. I'm really excited about learning all about the MOTHEREAD program today. I've heard a little bit about it, but sure don't know much about it. First off, Carol, what would you tell us? What is the MOTHEREAD program?
Well, MOTHEREAD is a program based on quality children's literature, and its goal is to improve and build better family communication through the use of this quality children's literature. It works through a group of parents and a group of children, where possible, going on at the same time and using the same book, and builds discussion around the book using whole language skills. The groups reading the book, talking about it, listening to one another, sometimes going on and dramatizing the story, sometimes doing taped versions of it for their own children or for children in hospitals or for somewhere else, and eventually sometimes doing some original writing.
I can tell I have a lot of questions already. This is good. When did the program get underway?
It started in North Carolina in 1987, and here in Minnesota I was just hired in February, and the program really was launched then, still in the organizing phase. It will begin operation to a limited extent this summer, and then we will be having parent and children's groups in the fall.
I see. And it is sponsored by the Minnesota Humanities Commission?
That's the organization which brought the program to Minnesota, yes.
Okay. And how did they get involved?
The Minnesota Humanities Commission heard about it from the North Carolina Humanities, where they too had a sponsorship interest, and looked at it as a literacy program, yes, but with something more than that, which the humanities is always interested in, looking at literature for what it applies to daily living and what it means to people, and the kinds of relationships and ties that people can build to one another and to the printed word, and what they can learn from about themselves and about life from good writing.
It's my understanding that you have some partners in this project. I had read something that someone had sent me out of a newsletter, I think. And I think it was Parents Anonymous and Junior League of Minneapolis.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
Could you tell me why those partners?
Well, there was some exploration done in the beginning for what groups might have the greatest interest in this type of a program, and since it is a kind of a parenting program, a program that helps parents to communicate in different ways and using different skills and developing different skills than they have been accustomed to, Parents Anonymous, which is a self-help group for parents who are at risk for having problems or running into abusive situations with their children, or who may have in their families had a history of abuse and therefore have concerns about that. It was a natural to connect with them, also because they meet on a weekly basis and they have children's groups as well. So it's kind of a bonus for those families to be able to have this as an additional option to their regular self-help night. Did you ask also about
the Junior League? Yes.
Oh, the Junior League all over the country has a history of very serious, well-dedicated, well-prepared, dependable volunteers. And when they learned about the program, and they have in other cities as well, they were very interested in it. Very often they are committed young mothers who want to practice something outside of their other life, their occupation or their family life, and build some skills at the same time. So they went through the process of deciding, would this be a project they would like to adopt, and fortunately for us they did. They have committed 11 volunteers in the coming year and a significant amount of funding over 5 years' time.
Oh, that's great. Well, that it helps me understand how you arrived at those partners. Now, Caron, you have something to do with Parents Anonymous. Could you tell us about your role in all of this?
As Children's Program Coordinator at Parents Anonymous in St. Paul, the state office, I'm constantly looking for programs that I think would be exciting for our families to participate in. One of the things that we know families want to work on continually is to build a positive relationship with each other within the family. I know from my own experience and my own passion for books that children's books can be one of those vehicles for having a family enjoy something together. The children's books can display art as well as talk about a certain message. So when I heard about the MOTHEREAD program, I said, this is something I think that our children's and parents groups would be interested in. And we have 50 chapters around the state, and so as an organization we're pretty well organized for bringing MOTHEREAD into just about any community that would be interested.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now, a question that people have been asking is, why is the program called MOTHEREAD when you have the emphasis on families?
The name comes from the originator, who is a woman in North Carolina who had 20-some years of experience with literacy programs and with adult education. And she was looking for a way to convey the warmth and the bonding that is also a kind of a result of this program and goes with it. So the shared R in MOTHEREAD is very important to her. The groups that she first started working with happened to be women. It was first used in a correctional facility in North Carolina and continues to be used in 2 of those facilities. But it has spread from there to Head Starts, Even Starts, home daycare programs, public libraries, many different kinds of children serving agencies. And there have been parents of both sexes that have participated. She also developed a program called FATHEREAD that has another set of curriculum, which, should we find a group that particularly wants to take a look at that aspect, we would do so. But the program is not limited to the female sex.
Well, that's interesting. I know before we started the program today, we were wondering how MOTHEREAD was spelled, and we were thinking it was 2. There were 2 R's, and so now I can understand why there's only 1. As the program develops here in Minnesota, do you plan to involve other groups throughout the state? For instance, would you collaborate with other youth and family serving organizations or services such as early childhood family education or community education or social services in the community, adult basic education, that kind of group? Yes, we certainly will, and we are beginning to connect with many of the examples that you've given. We've been talking with Head Start. We've been talking with an organization called Genesis 2, which is a group for women. We're also getting a lot of interest from the early childhood family education groups. There was a newsletter article in the newsletter of the Minnesota Humanities Commission, which, as I said, is our sponsor. And ever since this article was published, I've had about 10 or 12 daily inquiries about the program and how they might use it. The question for us is just how quickly we can move, because we're very low operational staff, and our process is slow and gradual because we want to get certain things in place first. But we're most happy to share the information with other organizations and see how we can cooperate. And the public libraries have been fantastic in their
offers of ways that we can work together, and the Friends of the Library are quite interested. So I don't think we will have a dearth of interested partners.
Yes, I don't think you will either. I know from experience that there are a lot of variations in family literacy programs out there. So that's why I was curious as to how all of the organizations that are interested in family literacy could apply some of the principles or ideas in this project. Another question is, before we get to the meat of all of this, which are the books and how you conduct the sessions, how will you let others know about this program? It sounds like a lot of people already do know through your newsletter, but do you plan on your own newsletter, or do you plan on, does Parents Anonymous have information that they get out? How will you get it out throughout the state that this is available?
Well, we're beginning gradually, because as I explained to you, I'm the only, at this point, half-time staff person, and it's difficult to be able to respond to all the questions personally that people have about it. So we're being a bit guarded about the progress of our publicity, but it has been publicized through the Humanities Commission newsletter, through the Parents Anonymous newsletter. I'm doing a lot of individual talking to agencies that would be most interested, and as time goes on, and when we really feel confident that we can service the demand, we will do a much wider publicity. One of our sponsors is the Target stores, and they will be working with us to help to make the program known throughout Minnesota.
Oh, that's good. I think there will be a lot of groups that will be interested in it. I guess into the next part of this, which I read in the newsletter article on the program, something about story sharing sessions. I'm not going to pretend at all that I know what that is. So, what are the story sharing sessions? Who's involved? Is it the mom, the dad, the kids? How old are the kids? What do you do in those sessions?
Well, a sample book that we're using is Half a Moon, One Whole Star, and we have a list of books like this one, which means it's a picture book with lots of pictures. There's a great story to it, and we would be conducting 2 separate classes, probably in 2 separate rooms, the parents in one session and the children in the other session. Both sessions, however, would be using the same book, so that the parents in their room would be reading Half a Moon, One Whole Star, and they would then talk about some story sharing, story stretching things that they could do with their child at home later on. So for instance, the story might make them think of their own childhood memory. It might make them think of ways that they could talk to their child about what was in the book. So the parents are thinking about some communication starts, some journal writing starts, maybe for just themselves, and a look at how they can really enjoy something with their children. At the same time, in the children's sessions, which are also facilitated by trained, actually anyone who's interested and would like to do it, the children read the same story, and then they will do probably an art activity, maybe a little role playing, maybe some simple games, but they would do an art activity that would reinforce something about the story. Or they would have their own discussion about being outside as this story is, or whatever the case was for the story. And the idea is then that each group of parents and children then go home and read the story together at home at some point in the week. And then the parents have a little better sense of some things that they could talk to with their children about the book.
Do they, how long do the sessions last?
Each class will be an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the age of the child. We can use these books with children as young as 3 if they have a good attention span and they're used to, sort of focusing their attention on one task. We could use it with children as old as 9 and 10. And so then their attention will be different within the classes. At home, parents could take 5 minutes with the story, or maybe they will take an hour or 2 hours at home. Maybe they'll do sections of reference to the book during the week, 3 or 4 different days.
Okay. I'm trying to just get a picture of how all of this works. So they come once a week. The kids, whatever kids they have?
Sure, between
Up
the ages
to
of 3
and 9.
Yeah, 9 or 10.
And then you take the parents separately and you take the kids separately. Then do they come together at any point?
Not at that night of the classes.
Okay.
They can do that at home later on.
Huh.
We might have a wrap-up party at the end of the whole 6-week or 8-week session. That would be fun.
Sounds like fun. Yeah, one of my questions was, how do you keep the story sharing sessions fun, at least most of the time, so that they don't get overly serious, or that they aren't just like more schoolwork, which I know is very good, but sometimes kids don't think it's all so good. How do you keep it rolling and keep people coming back and looking for more?
Well, I like to think that there are as many possibilities as there are people's thoughts and ideas and creative imagination focuses, in that a story has a certain text, but usually the story and the pictures suggest many other things. And so maybe a parent will be serious about a book, one reading, and they will talk about their own childhood, or they'll talk about, do you remember when and this happened? But maybe the next time they talk about this book, instead of talking about the story, they're going to talk about the fun it was to read the book for the first time. Remember when we read this book and you were feeling not so well that day and you thought you were having a cold coming on, and we decided to sit down and read our book, and wasn't that a fun time together? Make the story be a part of an everyday life for every child and every parent. It might be before bed. It might be in the car or the doctor's waiting office, waiting for a doctor's appointment. So the idea is to give enough of the love and possibilities in the book as it stands that the parents and the children will talk about it as many ways as they can think of. The trainings will be very excellent and appropriate place to have those beginnings of ideas, so that all of us who are trained to the MOTHEREAD program will have questions and will have our own imagination stimulated, and then we in turn will give that to the parents and the children, I think, pretty easily.
Sounds like fun. Do you want to share a little bit out of that book or some of the others that you have?
Sure. This is a fun one. It's Half a Moon, One Whole Star. It has been written by Crescent Dragon Wagon and illustrated by Jerry Pinkney. The text is a rhyming text, which makes it fun to read, and the illustrations are watercolor illustrations, which means they have a richness of them and a texture of them. The first page verse is, "Up above the earth so far, hang half a moon and one whole star. Hang one whole star and half a moon, nighttime will be coming soon." Robins fold their wings and sleep, and parrots rest in jungles deep. Now, simply from these 2 pages, you could see where you could talk about where do parrots live. The children maybe have been to a pet shop and they've seen different parrots. The robins, certainly, if they don't have a robin in their yard, they know what robins' nests are. So you could talk about simply the birds on the page and nighttime, and it's a quiet time, or you could talk about your own ritual. Night is when we get quiet, when we stop moving our body and we quiet our thoughts. So you can make it be part of a ritual idea. As well as talk about the art form. The next day you might have a child take watercolors and a paintbrush and paint a parrot. How would they paint a parrot? If they took a trip to a country that they saw a wild parrot, what would it look like? So these are the kinds of books and things that we'll talk about.
So I was under the impression earlier, before I knew anything about it, so I shouldn't have been under that impression, but I had it in my head that somehow or other this was bibliotherapy. It sounds like it's not.
Not really. It is a method of learning to bond with books and using those books in daily living, establishing a passion for learning. I think I heard Caron use that word earlier, and helping to instill that with your children. It is a program that may result in better mental health. It hopefully will, higher self-esteem, greater confidence, better ability to relate with others, relate with the rest of the world, to appreciate feelings and how to express them within the family. But the fact that many people overlook is that there are, as well as being lots of people in the country who are illiterate, there are a lot of people in the country who are illiterate, who don't really see a need or understand why they would want to sit down and read. And this is a program that develops that interest, because most parents want to find a better way to work with their children, to read with their children, want their children to read better, and to be able to do it together and share some of these wonderful feelings about literature at the same time is just a frosting on the cake.
That's right. It is fun. Caron, though, at least that book, I'm wondering about the reading level on some of the books. You mentioned parents who don't read and maybe can't read at a very high level. What do you do in that case?
Well, that's one of the reasons we have separate classes initially for all the books, so that perhaps the parents will have the story read to them first, so that the flow of the words, the meaning of the story will not be caught up in how to decipher the words. So that if they have the story read to them first, it also role models how to tell a children's story, how to change your voice, how to talk faster or slower. So they will first kind of be pulled into the excitement of the story. Then the facilitators can take the time with each parent, if need be, on really sort of taking the words apart for meaning. So if there's a word in there that the parent maybe pronounces but isn't quite sure what it means, they'll talk about it. They could maybe do a journal writing exercise where they could write words that they were reminded of when they read this word, and so that when they go to talk to their child, they won't be limited by even that word and its meaning. Maybe they'll have other words that will come to mind. Maybe the facilitator will say, what would the words be that your child would use to describe this book? So that sometimes the parents then can get a sense of a children's vocabulary and what their comprehension level is. So that it's not a sounds like kind of reading exercise, but it's more of the flow of the meaning and the poetic beauty of the words. And then I think incidentally how to pronounce the words will come pretty easily.
Now, what if you do find parents who need to go to adult basic education classes? Do you have that information that you make available, or that you have it at your class site?
This is information that will be shared, yes, because this is not meant to take the place of a traditional literacy program. It's a tool, an alternative, another way to go at it.
Okay.
And we'll have those resources available.
Yes, because I think that communication between the local adult basic education people and the local volunteer literacy people would be really important.
Right. One of the groups that you ask about, other groups we were communicating with and who will be publicizing this, the Minnesota Literacy Council is another. While we haven't exactly developed a partnership, they have offered their services of their 800 numbers and their newsletters.
Super. I have a couple of questions about what happens after participants leave the program. Do they? I mean, I think you said did you say 6 weeks? 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, so I've come for 6 to 8 weeks, and then I've finished this program. Do you do anything to help me as a mom continue my reading activities at home with my kids?
We will have taken the groups to the library or brought the library to the groups through a visiting librarian or through explaining procedures for how you get a library card and where do you go for the library. But the more personal the contact, the better we will do with it, because of many people's aversions to buildings that are new to them. And it has occurred in the previous groups in other parts of the country where groups have completed the 8 weeks. They have gone on as kind of a mutual interest group. The whole process is learner-centered, and the learners do have the opportunity to shape the program so that if they want to go on for a second 8 weeks in some manner, we will find ways to help them try to work that out.
How can they help shape the program?
It has happened that groups have felt that a particular book didn't suit their culture or might be misinterpreted in some way, and they have given input on that. And so other books, there are always plenty of excellent children's books. And with Karen's expertise in children's literature, we have no fear that in Minnesota we will be able to continue to supplement and come up with others. That is a rarity, but in other ways, the learners may decide, we don't want to spend just 1 week on this book. We would like to go on, and next week we'd like to do audio tapes, or let's do a dramatization, or for our last, after the end of the 8 weeks, could you help us do a videotape of something based on this book? And it has happened, and we hope that we'll be able to provide opportunities like that here too.
Well, for a final question, how are you going to know if what you're doing makes a difference in people's lives?
Interestingly enough, in North Carolina, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill came to the MOTHEREAD Incorporated and said, we'd like to help you do an evaluative study of your participants. And so jointly, they worked out a series of kind of tests and questionnaires and interviews, and that was begun in January of this year, January 1990, and so they are 5 months into the evaluation now, and it's an 18-month study. It focuses on the parents because this is a family centered program. So it focuses on parenting skills, attitudinal responses to how people feel about literature. There are some reading tests that are done, but once again, because this is a learner-centered program, the learners sometimes have slightly different goals to begin with than the program itself. So part of the evaluation is, have the learners met the goals that they had set for themselves? We'll be using those tools here, the North Carolina tools.
Well, it's been really fun learning about all of this. I think we need more time. I have a lot more questions.
We'll come back. Could you tell that we're enthusiastic about it?
Yes, definitely. It's been very interesting. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
MOTHEREAD, an example of an innovative program bringing children, parents, and books together. Thank you, Carol Frisch, Karen Chapman, and Sherry Lampman. And thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.